For most of his life, many people have known Peter O'Brien as that guy who produced fine films such as The Grey Fox and My American Cousin, running the Canadian Film Centre, and since 2005 being the chairman of the board here at TVO. What very few people knew was that Peter O'Brien was one of many school-age boys back in England who were sexually abused by one of their teachers. Peter kept quiet about this victimization for about half a century, but no more. Here to tell us why, TVO's chairman of the board, Peter O'Brien. It is great to finally welcome you into the studio.
Thank you, Steve.
We've had this program on the air for about 9.5 years now. You've never been a guest.
No, I haven't.
Well, that ends right now. We are going to get to why you have decided to end your silence on this, but let's start with the background. What school were you attending overseas?
In Buckinghamshire, a prep school. A private boarding prep school.
And how old were you?
I was 10, 11, 12.
So grades, what is that?
Well, up to grade 7, would it be?
Okay.
About.
And 10, 11, 12. Yes, up to grade 7. Okay.
Something like that.
Who was the teacher who was involved in all of this?
Well, there was more than one, not in my case, but my teacher was called Hugh Henry, and he was the charismatic rugby coach. And in the culture of those schools, rugby was number one. And if you wanted to get on the rugby team, you wanted to be in the favor of that particular person.
So he was a bit of a superstar on campus.
He was.
And when and how did he start his abuse?
Well, there's much that's been said about the grooming of children, but it was very much like that. I think he had looking back on it, he had a system, and if you pass certain tests, then it might get more serious.
A test like what?
Well, he would decide, not during rugby, but he would teach tackling before going into a meal on the lawn outside the dining hall. And he'd tackle some little guys, and then he'd say, okay, now you got to tackle me. And so this is how he taught it. And then everyone would roll around on the ground, and hands would get into untoward places, usually down the back of pants, and that would be hilariously funny. Everyone would scream with laughter and giggle and everything. And the kids who put up with that, or, sort of went along, maybe he started to look at them differently, maybe.
So at some point you found yourself alone with this guy?
That's right. And so the first time hands went down the front of pants was in a classroom during extra French tutoring. And then it went on from there. I was placed in a single room, taken out of the dorm and put in a single room above the dining hall gym area of the school. And by him, he said, you lucky chap, he said, everybody wants to be up in this room. And
he portrayed it as a desirable thing.
That's right, as a privilege, And then he would come there in the night.
And as it got increasingly offside, do you recall what you thought?
Well, I think two things really happen when you're in that situation. You're away from home. There's no one around. In my case, perhaps I was homesick. I wanted the attention of someone in power, and a protector, maybe. No one would believe anything a child would say. We were. I've talked to the guys since then in the last 3 years, and we all talk about that. You were isolated, and so I think I separated it. I think every day in the morning I forgot about what happened last night, and we were back, back in school, back on the rugby field. It was just a different world, night and day.
Did you tell anybody?
No.
Not a soul?
No.
Other students?
No.
No other staff?
Certainly not.
Parents back home?
No.
Do you know why you didn't?
Well, I think what happens is you get drawn across that line before you know it. And once something has happened, once you've been on the man's bed or he's been in yours, kind of thing, when that line's crossed, there's no way back, and you know it's wrong. You know it's really wrong.
So you had a definite sense that what was happening here was not appropriate.
Yes, and it was obviously secret to him too. You know, in other words, if it had been all right, it wouldn't have been done in that way.
Did he ever explicitly say, Peter, this is entre nous, don't tell anybody about this?
Not that I remember. Interesting, because I think the guys that really do that systemically, they know you're not going to tell anybody, because they understand that the complicity the child feels in it. It's a curious thing. There's a complicity you feel, there's a shame, a guilt that you carry forever. And they, I think, understand that.
How long did this abuse persist for?
About a year and 3 months.
Any idea how many occasions it would have happened on?
Not really. Many.
More than a few, in other words?
Yes.
Repeatedly?
Yes.
I asked this next question with some trepidation, and if you want to take a pass, that's okay. But how specific do you want to be in describing what he did?
Well, it's starting just with hands here and there, but by the time it was in its coming to an end, and I think it came to an end because I was pulled out for no reason other than my parents wanted to return to Canada. But probably when this is a pedophile who isn't interested in kids once they go through puberty. So, you know, once you get to about 12 or whatever it may be. So it was probably coming to an end anyway. But the most serious part really took place in his bedsit room. He had the only room of any staff in the school buildings, and so I would be called there for French tutoring, and I'd sit on the bed, on the edge of the bed, and he would start to, and I would have to read whatever little exercise it was, and at some point he would grab me into a kind of wrestling hold, which put him on his back on the bed and me on top of him, face down. And so this is what the reason I'm saying that is the police in the UK call it simulated sex. And so it isn't actual, but it's between the child's thighs is what actually happens.
How many young kids was he doing this to?
There were 9 of us complainants in his case. Each of us knew at least, we realized later, and in talking to others later, 3 others. That would make it 36. And but a man of this profile, the experts who I don't think know an awful lot about this, really, surprisingly, I don't think there's much funding for research in all of this. Governments don't like to be part of pedophile research, I guess, I don't know. But they say that it's over 100 usually for someone of this profile who goes about it in this way.
How does a teacher abuse 100 kids and no one knows it? No other staff knew about it?
Well, I think that's an incredible question and a really important one, because I think they do. I think people see, but they don't want to get involved. They don't want to ruin someone's reputation or put themselves in an embarrassing position. All of those things that people do to not see what's going on have nothing to do with the child being abused. It's quite amazing. It's just adult reasons. It's quite amazing. But in my case, for example, when I was leaving his room on one of these frightening occasions, the matron of the school, the nurse, was in a little office right opposite his doorway. I came out to flee down the hall, and she said, I didn't hear much French going on in there.
So she had a hunch.
That's more than a hunch in my estimation. She knew what was going on. She might have been saying that to him for his benefit more than mine. I don't know. But she never acted upon that hunch, if that's what it was.
You told us you eventually left the school, came back to Canada. What did you do with all of that information, with all of those experiences that were running around in your brain somewhere once you crossed the Atlantic?
Well, I put them under the Canadian shield somewhere, I think.
Just buried it?
Yep.
Still didn't tell anybody?
No.
How does somebody, so you're what, 13 now, I guess, eh?
Right.
When you come home?
Late 12s.
Late
Yeah,
12s. How, do you know how you were able to compartmentalize this stuff so well?
Well, I think apart from perhaps having a great talent for compartmentalization, I think that I had the benefit of a kind of geographic cure in a way. I was suddenly pulled out. Suddenly, a day later, we were on a ship between Ireland and the Mull of Kintyre, heading out into the Atlantic. So it was a complete change. I started new at a new school, in a new country, my country, with great family around. My family, we were reunited, and I'm talking about cousins and aunts and uncles, and so I was home, and I think I was able to, kind of use that and just simply leave it behind. It didn't stay behind, but I thought perhaps I could leave it behind.
Did you still think of it when you were back here in Canada?
I think not in those days, and I think I didn't. I gradually came to believe that this hadn't happened to me even, I think.
Did you ever have any further contact with that teacher after coming back to Canada?
No, I didn't. But I did with other guys who knew him. I did. I kept in touch with friends from that school, still to this day.
I'm going to do some serious fast forwarding here because for those who don't know, you are married to our local MP,
Yes.
Carolyn Bennett, whom you knew for how long after you decided to marry?
I guess we knew each other, before we decided to get married?
Well, you were
I think 3 weeks or a month or something like that.
That's pretty. And you're married how long now?
35 years.
That's amazing. Okay. Did you ever tell her?
Yes, I did, before we were married.
Before you were married, you
Yes,
told her?
Yes.
Did she, I mean, now she's a medical doctor.
Yes.
Did she recommend you do anything?
I underplayed it enormously. I just said this had happened, but not in the way I described it to you. I just said, there was some stuff that went on with this guy. Really just about talking about Hugh Henry and just saying, he was also a bit of a, touchy-feely guy, She has always said that she sort of knew something like that was, she could tell some things, I suppose, about me maybe. But what you're asking is, did I go into deep therapy or anything? No, I didn't.
No. And she didn't recommend anything at that point? It was sort of...
Not at that point, no.
Okay. And was she the first person you told?
Yes. Pretty sure.
Well, you have kept this very, very secret for a very, very long time, until recently. You
Yes.
did, not too long ago, an op-ed for the Globe and Mail in
Yes.
which you wrote about this and revealed it to the world for the first time. What made
Yes.
you do that?
Well, there was a stage in between, of course, where I became a complainant. In other words, I spoke up about it from a legal point of view.
I'm not sure that was known here, though.
No.
In fact, I'm quite sure nobody knew about that
It
here.
wasn't, but I saw a film on TVO, which is just great. TVO is what kind of woke me up to my own past, so to speak.
When did you see the film?
In September of 2011. And
What was the doc about?
and it was called Chosen, and it was about the grooming and sexual abuse of boys at schools in England, and it was the school right next to the school I attended, and we used to play sports against. And quite early in the film, this is late at night, quite early in the film, a boy who's now a man looked in the camera and described his abuser, and it was my abuser.
Same guy.
Same guy. No question. Didn't say his name, but no question about it. And I was rocked by that because this was in a film and this was on television and it was on TVO and I was watching it. So then, I didn't do anything about it right then. But I think because of that film, Hugh Henry was arrested and charged in England.
And I guess at that point, you know you're not the only one now.
That's right. Well, the big thing was I'd always thought it was just me. I think that's another thing they do. And so that's right. There are others.
And that was a revelation.
Yes, yes. And what was I going to now do? I wasn't going to do anything, but Carolyn said, "What are you going to do about this?"
See, because I figured somewhere along the way,
Yeah.
she was not going to let you
That's right.
just let this lie.
No, but I was always trying, my plan had always been keep skating. You know, I thought I had a breakaway on this, and I got checked from behind.
Great hockey analogy. I knew you were going to get one of those in before we were done here. Okay, so you're a party to this legal situation that takes place in Great Britain.
Yes.
Did you go back and testify?
Yes.
How did that go?
Well, he ended up pleading guilty. I testified in another trial associated with his. So I went back quite often.
Did you find how did you find the experience of having to talk about it?
Very difficult. And so my greatest helper in all of it, and it was a young English cop who I realize now must have been, hardly 30 years old. And he had a real touch, and he knew when I was 11 and when, because in that year I was doing it, I was 65. If that's okay to talk about age. That's 3 years ago, and about now, and he was able to bring me out. I didn't believe that Hugh Henry was a predatory pedophile, and I didn't believe really that I was a victim or a survivor. And one day, on the phone, I think it was, I said, "Oh, I don't know if I want to sign this. If I sign this witness statement, this guy could go to jail. I mean, he's a really great guy. This is me still at 65." And this policeman said, "Let me tell you, sir, he is not a really great guy." And somehow hearing that and the way he said it made me realize that I did go through this, and that he is one of those guys. And so I signed. And my statement was quite helpful because I was removed from there. I couldn't have been talking to the other guys. Collusion is a big defense. So anyway, he pled guilty, and then we went on from there.
And I guess at some point you did have contact with the other people he victimized, and how did that go? Did you share notes?
Well, I wasn't allowed to meet any of the other guys, and this surprised me. I had what I was longing to do since I saw the film was to meet that other guy who had said that he was a victim too of the same guy, but the police said you can't do that because that can contaminate the evidence, and it was another year and a half, the day after, almost 2 years after the sentencing it was supposed to be the sentencing of Hugh Henry and a man called Peter Wright. And I flew over to England for it, and about the same time as I landed, Hugh Henry jumped in front of a train and suicided. But on the evening of not the evening, right after the sentencing, we all went to the Crown Pub in Amersham. I love saying that.
And you roasted a few.
And we, with pints in our hands, we said hello to each other. It was fantastic.
What a moment.
It was great.
But your tormentor is dead.
Yes.
Did you want to have that moment in court where you locked eyes with him and?
Well, I think that whether you lock eyes, but to see, I don't. It's funny. Most of the other guys who talked about it were quite angry about it. They're bitter.
They wanted to see him go to jail.
Yeah, I mean, he cheated the hangman, so to speak, to use that expression.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's perhaps a bit different, but to be quite honest, I felt sort of relief that it was over, and for him too. I don't mean that I wanted that to happen. I just mean that, you know, he would go to prison. His family knew about it. I think he kept a lot of information away from he had a wife, a daughter.
Did they know?
But the daughter was a great supporter, but his wife, I don't think, knew very much about it. And
so was he married when he was doing all this?
no,
Not at that point.
not at that point.
Are you glad you went public?
So now, in going public, thanks for bringing me back. I did that and learned to speak about it, and to face it, and to recognize it. And then I could have stopped at that point. But there are a number of conversations I had. One of them was a recurring conversation, and I hope it's okay to tell you what it is. And it's between myself and friends who are men I know. And a number of them say, you know, this is great, you know, I think it's great what you're doing. But others say, it's a long time ago, you're fine, you've been productive, it didn't ruin your life. You know, why on earth would you talk about this? And why don't you just get on with your life?
What do you say to them?
And you know, the first time it happened, I was quite astounded, because I realized that had been my strategy for 50 years, more than 50 years. And I realized that perhaps if I had been able to speak out, or that nurse or matron, that I was the oldest of the 9 complainants that I just talked about, who actually went after Hugh Henry. If I had been able to do that, would they have been abused? And what about the other 100, you know? And so I realized that I'd been quiet all that time, and this is how it works. And I thought, that's not right. That's not right at all. We've got to talk about it, just like with mental health, just like other issues. It's got to have the benefit of sunshine on it to help save children from this misery.
Because the pedophiles depend on your silence, don't they?
Oh, they do. Yeah, they do. And I believe they're, in a lot of cases you see, they're confident of it. They're quite confident of it.
How do we go from a subject we don't want to talk about, let's keep it in the shadows, how do we go from that to a society that needs to open up its eyes, let the sunshine in so we can deal with this?
Right. Well, I think many organizations across the country, and obviously children's aid societies, but there are a number of wonderful organizations and committed people in Canada, as well as the UK and everywhere else, devoted to this. And they work in something they call child efficacy, which is, you know, giving the kids the equipment to say no, or to yell fire, or to, you know.
Because they think they're powerless and can't do that.
And they are in a certain way, but they don't believe anyone will believe them, and nor can they resist the power differential. So they have to know about it. It's a beginning. But why? This is something that I have a beef about. Why is it always on the children to have to do something? We have in Canada mandatory reporting in all provinces. And that means that professionals who see or get wind of anything have to report it. People who are in the education or, you know, coaching business. But it really applies to all of us. You know, one of the reasons I want to talk about it is I want everyone to keep their eyes open. And if they see it, they don't have to challenge anybody. They don't have to cause all kinds of disruption. But to monitor, and there are particular people we can learn if we look into this. We can ask the advice from and report it to, and then it's someone else's issue. We like to say that wonderful coach couldn't possibly be doing this. That's absolute nonsense. But we have to not separate the two things. A wonderful person can, unfortunately, slip into this. And by and large, of course, and it's said all the time, the vast majority of people who do great work in coaching children, teaching children. They are heroes to us, and we must look at them that way. They're doing a great job. But when it gets offside, the whistle has to blow, even if they're great people.
I got one last question. How are you now?
Well, I think I'm doing better with it. I think when the policeman, Andy Alexander, said to me, "Were you abused when you were a boarder at that school?" It took me about 5 minutes to say, finally, I said, well, I just want to support the guys that are doing it and everything. And he said, "Were you?" And I finally said, yes, I was. And he said, that's the toughest part over. That's the worst part right there. It's going to get better from now on. It didn't for a while. It didn't for a year or two. But I think I do feel better about it. I feel also liberated in a certain way. And I also feel empowered to speak to you about it.
I can't thank you enough for coming in to do this.
Thank
I called you the day after I read the piece in the Globe and Mail telling you how much guts I thought you had. So good on you, Peter O'Brien.
Thanks, Steve.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.